What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Meta Design. You see, in the last episode, we learned a little bit of compositing, which means that we learned how to take different images and put them in the same scene. The other bit that I was talking to you about in the beginning of the episode was about illustrations, right? You can also use Photoshop and the pen tool in specific to make logos, illustrations, comic books even, right? So a lot of people, once they get reasonably familiar with Photoshop, they start doing their illustrations on another tool called Adobe Illustrator. But because I've been using both tools for a very, very long time, I feel like you can do a lot of things on Photoshop that you would be able to do on Illustrator. And it doesn't make sense for me to teach you an entirely new tool on this, although the interfaces of both tools are very similar. If you've done a bit of Photoshop, Illustrator should feel fairly familiar to you. But instead, we're going to use Photoshop as a tool to do illustration. It's not a bad idea. And it gets the point across. And today we'll make something, a little bit interesting, something that you can actually do side by side. So let's get started. All right, so I'm on Google and I've been looking at Popeye because, with all the stress of running, companies and investments and also doing the Meta platform, I've had zero time. So sometimes I just sit on YouTube and I want something completely brain dead. I look at old cartoon videos of Popeye. So it just, I was just reminded of it today. And I just Googled Popeye cartoon. I'm just going to click this. I'm going to take this old picture. It's very pixelated. You probably can't see it, but it's a rough picture. And I'm going to put it into Photoshop. So I'm just going to, create a new document. That's file, new. Just going to keep it at whatever resolution was in. And we're going to make a logo with just Popeye's head. So I'm just going to put this in. As you can see, he doesn't look very happy. And we're only going to take his face and put that as part of a logo, maybe up till his neck. We're going to use a slightly different technique, right? So we're going to use our pen tool to kind of simulate or use the brush to kind of simulate the stroke around Popeye's outline. And for anything that's too thick, for maybe, the cap and stuff like that, we are going to use, we're actually going to make an entire pen tool's thing. So we're actually going to make a shape. Otherwise, we're just going to use something called stroke path. And I'm going to show you how that works. So I'm going to pick up the pen tool. Let's start maybe with Popeye's neck. Let's start with this. So I click here, and all I'm going to do is let's start from the other direction. Let's start from here, go all the way here, and I'm just going to end his neck somewhat like this. This is reasonable. Hold Alt, cut the curve, come back. Now, instead of closing the curve like we usually do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. That's layer, new layer. Okay, we'll call it neck _ outline. I'm going to press OK. I'm going to right click. I'm going to click on stroke path. Now, before we stroke path, the stroke path will ask you how you want to stroke it. And we're going to use the brush to stroke it, this brush. So let's just make sure the brush is in the right place. Click on the brush. We're going to use we got 6 pixels. That should be okay. 100% opacity, 100% flow. Make sure we have a thick, hard, round brush, not a soft one. And going back to the pen tool, right click, stroke path, brush. That should be okay. And as you can see, we have this little outline of a neck. Now to stop a pen tool path, you have to hit the enter key. So I'm going to click on the pen tool and hit the enter key to get rid of the path. Now, if I hide the baseline image, you see that we've created this neck of ours, right? And we're going to keep at it. We're going to use the same technique to kind of outline the entire thing. Let me show you how I do the hat first. So click, going to do this, cut the curve. I'm going to go a little faster if you guys don't mind. We've done this multiple episodes in. It should be bread and butter to you now. Hold Alt to cut out paths. Let's just get this done with. All right. Right click, stroke path. We're going to do it on a new layer actually. That's Control Shift N that I just pressed. Hat. Let's just call it hat. Right click, stroke path, brush. We got it. Hit the enter key. I'm going to click here again because I want this extra bit, stroke 2. And I'm just gonna right click, stroke path in the same layer called hat, stroked it, pressed enter. And as you can see now, if I hide this, we have the hat, right? So we're going to continue doing, the rest of Popeye. You guys can skip over if, actually don't skip over, like do it along with me. You're not going to learn if you skip stuff. It's too long a curve. Still too long a curve. Okay. That's good. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this, and you can always double click a layer to call it, to change its name. I'm going to call it chin. Right click, stroke path, enter, enter. The second time I'm pressing enter to get out of the pen tool thing, the path mode. Alright, so do this. That's good. Right click, stroke path, enter, enter. Right, so we have his butt chin, as you can see. It's all starting to come together now. So we'll do his ear. And as you can see with his ear, you'll see that this stroke is not going to work really well because it's just going to make a line and we want the teardrop. So instead of just, using the stroke path, we're actually going to make a shape here. And you guys know how to make a shape. You've learned it in previous videos, which is we're actually going to close the path. Okay, so I'm going to make this, close the path, create a new layer. Let's call it left. Actually, let's call it thick shapes. Right click, make selection, press OK. And I'm just going to take the fill tool and I'm going to fill this in with black. Right, my foreground color is black. I just fill this in with black. Right, press Command D to deselect. Right, so now I'm going to take all the thick shapes. Let's just do all the thick shapes at once. This is the circle. Actually, we'll redo this eye later, but we'll just use the ellipse tool to create an eye. So this cartoon was probably created a long time ago. These are all accidents. I don't know if they meant the strokes to change in width like this. But fortunately or unfortunately, that's what we got to deal with. That's the beauty, right? Sometimes accidents become part of, like, simulating pressure is actually a part of Photoshop because of these accidents that comic book artists made in the past. Or maybe it's, it's an intended thing that was common during that time. Either way, it's pretty cool. It's nice to, as you can see, I'm struggling with this particular curve because we don't have to be perfect here. This is, after all, an old cartoon. So, all right, so I've marked 3 bits. I'm just gonna right click, make selection. Wait, what? That's good. Wait a second. I'm just going to fill this in with black. Right, just end the path. Gonna start working on the eyebrow now. Some of these were accidents in the past. The people probably wanted the strokes to be uniform, but when you're doing it with, a piece of paper, man, I can't even think about the passion that was required to make something like this. It would have been hell. It would have been absolute hell. Kudos to these guys. At least today we have all of these tools. We have some fantastic stuff at our disposal, which is why it hurts me that not enough people are creating. It was actually pretty easy to create compared to in the past. Let's continue to stroke this. We'll go back to the fill paths. We got that. Right click. Let's make a new layer. Let's call it crease, lines, and eye. All right, so right click, fill path, not fill path, sorry, right click, stroke path, brush, enter again, right click, stroke path, brush, enter again. Click, stroke path, brush, enter again. Click, stroke path, enter. Maybe I can move this a little bit to it. Yeah, that's okay. And maybe I can use a slightly thicker brush here. I can just go to brush, maybe make it 10 pixels. And select this, right click, stroke path, brush, just enter. Just I did that on purpose. I'm just making sure there's a little bit of line type crease. And you know what? We're a healthy, I mean, we're a show for smart people, right? So we're going to avoid the cigar here. So not like I care, but yeah, just I'm lazy, guys. So let's just finish off the ear. Right click, stroke path, enter. That's just, oh my god, we need the brush to be smaller again. 6 pixels. Right click, get the pen tool, right click, stroke path, brush, enter. Okay, so if you see now, we have like sort of an outline. Let's just get these things a little closer. Crease lines, yeah. Let's pull the neck. That's right click. I'm right clicking to select the layer because sometimes you might select the wrong layer. Just making sure everything lines up nicely. What are we missing? Okay, so we are missing. Let me just do this without, you know, any of the. Right click, stroke path, brush. All right, this is good. Yeah, that's fine. No, we don't have to be perfectly accurate here. Let me just get us an eye. So I'm going to take the ellipse tool and draw us an eye. And I'm going to move the eye a little bit. Rotate it. That's Command plus T. Rotate a little bit. Put it here. And Popeye looks like he's angry again. Missing something. Yep, so it's only his cigar we're missing. This looks good enough, and we look like we have a decent Popeye shape. And you know, now that we have this, I'm just gonna just group all of this, call it face, move it around, Command T, just make it a little smaller so I'm able to manage it a little easier. And as you can see, you know, it looks fun. It looks like a nice illustrated image, but let's fill it in with some color. And the right way to fill it in with color is to, you know, get inside and close up the parts of this curve. So except the ellipse, I'm just gonna take everything else, press Command E to merge, right? And now just gonna go to the fill tool, select a nice little orange color and just fill it in. Right? Now there are two ways to do this. You can either just fill it in like this and, you know, play around with it, and it's one way to do it, right? But the better way to do it, in my opinion, is just select the magic wand tool, set contiguous to on, right? That means it'll only select pixels that are connected to each other. It's not going to randomly select white pixels outside as well. You're just going to select what's inside of this, right? So Command Shift N, I'm going to make a new layer first. I'll call it face color. I'm not going to go there yet. Go back to crease lines and eye, select what's inside, right? Hold the shift key and select the neck, right? So we have everything apart from the hat. Then you go to the face color layer, take the paint bucket tool, drop her in. Actually, this is an ugly orange color. Let's just take something lighter, pinkish. Yeah, this looks good. And we dropped the paint in. Now this has started looking a little more like Popeye. We're gonna make sure there's some light on his face, right? Just making sure this bit is light. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use something called the command click, which is hold the control button on your keyboard and click this mini thing that you can see, or the mini thumbnail. Click it and you select everything that's in the layer, and I'm going to create a new layer now, right? And as you can see, I'm creating layers in multiple different ways, so you guys get comfortable with the idea that you can do the same thing in many different ways in Photoshop. I'm going to call this layer face highlight. Okay, and now what I'm going to do something funny, right? I'm going to take the elliptical marquee tool, I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to click on intersection. So you guys know how sets work, right? You know how intersection works. I have this much of something or this much of something. Intersection means I'm only going to select what's in the middle, right? What's in here, right? And I'm going to avoid everything that's not intersecting. So it's very simple. I'm just going to choose, maybe we want the highlight. Actually, let's undo. Maybe I just want this much of a highlight, right? Maybe I just want this much of a highlight. Selected only that. I'm going to take the color wheel or the fill, reduce the color, make it whiter, and put it here. And as you can see, it's too much. It's too deep. So let's just have a thin fill, right? Just thin, just a little bit. Let's see. Wait, maybe you just want up till his nose and a little bit of his chin. Let's put this in. And as you can see, now it looks a little bit better, right? It looks like this thin kind of shadow or a highlight. There's a highlight on that part of the face and the shadow at the bottom. And we can do the same thing with the bottom, right? So we can go to face color. Again, command, that is control, command on the Mac, control on the Windows, and click the thumbnail to select everything that's on that particular layer. And what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to click on the polygonal lasso tool. I'm going to click on intersect with selection, and I'm going to make sure I only bring in just a little bit, right? And as you can see, the intersection got selected. Going to create a new layer, right? I'm going to call this neck underscore darken, and I'm going to choose a darker color and just put it here. Whoops. Pick the paint bucket tool and just put it here under the neck. And as you can see, this looks good, and maybe a little overdone. Let's choose slightly lighter color, right? And as you can see, a little bit of nice little darkness on Popeye. And you can do something really cool, right? You can take the crease lines and you can put above everything, and this makes sure that, you know, any mistakes you made are kind of covered by the crease lines. The paint can sometimes edge out a little bit. We put the crease lines on top, so there's no issues anymore. So Popeye started taking shape. You know, we're just gonna take the hat for a second. Actually, we're gonna ignore the hat. I think it's white. That's the intended color. So I'm just gonna close the face, right? And I am going to create an ellipse. Just gonna go to ellipse, select white color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the shift key and create a circle, right, just behind Popeye. Enter. You can't see it because it's white color, because the foreground color is white. And I'm going to move it down. You still can't see it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to function with layer styles. I'm going to click on stroke, right? And I'm going to increase the size of the stroke, right? Change the color to maybe light blue. Yeah, light blue looks good. And then I'm going to add another stroke. And that's the cool thing. You can keep adding different kinds of strokes. And this one I'm going to make white again. I'm going to increase the size. I'm going to add another stroke. This time blue again. A little different kind of blue. And just making it cool side. You know what? Let's have this as an outside stroke. Let's have this as an outside stroke too. And we're just gonna move this. So what we're gonna do is, so strokes are ordered. I mean, you see them depending on their order. So I'll just put the white stroke in the middle. Otherwise you won't be able to see it. Click on outside. And as you can see, we've created this wonderful system of strokes that allows you to show Popeye off in the best way possible. Let's reduce this. And remember, strokes are in order. So the reason we weren't able to see the white stroke was because it had to be outside and it had to be above the light blue stroke, right? Otherwise the light blue stroke would obviously, be over it. And that was a mistake I was making. And yeah, even after many years of Photoshop, I still make a ton of mistakes. It's a little bit of, I don't prepare these before I actually do them. But yeah, it's cool. It just goes to show you that a lot of trial and error associated with this, with design in general. Press OK. And I'm going to go to Google now. I'm just going to quickly show you how to get a font. So let's just look at some comic book font, right? Let's look at comic book font. Down to the first thing that I see. This is probably not going to be the Popeye font. That's okay. What you need to do is just select all the fonts, right click and click on install. It installs it into Windows. It's immediately available on Photoshop. That's right. Go to Photoshop and I click on Popeye. Select the font. It's called comic book. Bold. Right, move it up. Command Control T. It's down, and you can't see it. It's white. So I'm just going to go to Function or Layer Style. I call it Function because there's an FX here. People who studied math, you know that it means function. It's going to drop a shadow, a little bit of a soft shadow, right? And like I mentioned before, you can drop multiple shadows. So firstly, I'm going to change the color of this, make it, I don't know, yellow. No, I'm just going to keep it off-white, a little bit off-white, just a little bit off-white. Given it one drop shadow, I add in another drop shadow. And here I'm going to change the distance, make it even more. And I'm going to make this yellow in color, right? This bright orangey yellow. I'm going to change the blend mode to normal, change the opacity up. As you can see, I really don't remember how the Popeye font is, but this is okay. And add a stroke to this. We're just gonna reduce the stroke, make it black. This is definitely not how Popeye looks, but I'm just showing you how you can add multiple strokes in fonts. All right, so not very happy with what I've come up with, but ta-da, right? So, I just showed you how to use multiple drop shadows and, add multiple strokes. We learned how to do the pen tool. And in the next and final episode of this entire series, I'm going to be teaching you what you should do to build yourself as a designer, right? Where do you go next? Do you go and do websites? Do you go and, go to Hollywood? Do you go into video? How do you present yourself? We're going to go through all of that because, I think it's not just important for you to keep creating a lot of stuff, keep copying a lot of stuff. It's also important for you to constantly put yourself out there because this is a game of visibility, right? So catch you in the next episode.